Hi, welcome to our channel of IGNOU Audiobooks, Indira Gandhi National Open University School of Continuing Education, SOCE. Certificate in Early Childhood Special Education Enabling Inclusion Hearing Impairment, CESEIHI. BCD 101 Introduction to Disability. Block-1 Paradigm Shift in Disability. Unit-1 Understanding Disability. 1.1 Introduction. Disability is a universal human condition and has been present since the dawn of civilization, across cultures and societies. More than 1 billion people in the world experience disabilities. Disability can affect anyone at any time. While disability has been a part of the human race since the beginning, the society has had a different approach towards people with disabilities at different times. In this unit, you will understand how disability has been understood at different times in history and the current approach towards disability. Different perspectives regarding disability influence the actions of the society and the government towards persons with disabilities, and therefore it is important to understand how these perspectives have evolved over the years. You will learn that each child is unique and that sameness and differences are shared amongst all children, with and without disabilities. Children with disabilities are similar to other children in many ways and different from them in other ways. The estimates regarding the number of people with disability vary. The Census 2011 figures suggest that there are 26.8 million persons with disabilities in the country. Thus, about 2.21% of our population disabled. The NSSO 2018 76th round statistics say that in India the prevalence of disability in 2.2% as per whose estimates around 1.3 billion people around the globe are experiencing significant disability, that is almost 16% of the world's population. Objectives. After studying this unit, you will be able to understand how the perspective towards people with disabilities has changed over the centuries. Times explain the meaning of the terms impairment, disability, and functioning. Times describe the changing approach towards disability. Times describe what is meant by the terms unique needs and children with disabilities. Times state how the person's impairment interacts with the environment and influences her day-to-day functioning in the family and the community, and times understand how children with disabilities are same as and different from children with disabilities and appreciate diversity amongst children. 1 point to a brief historical perspective. About 600 million people in the world experience disabilities. Disability has been a part of the human race since beginning, and at different times the society has had a different approach towards people with disabilities. Till the 17th century, the approach towards people with disabilities was that of isolation. It was felt that people with disabilities had nothing to contribute to the society and were, in fact, a burden. Therefore, it was best to keep them away in homes or institutions especially created for them. People with disabilities were not valued as human beings, were not seen as persons who had worth and who could lead life along with other non-disabled members of society. In the 17th century, the approach towards persons with disabilities started changing towards one of concern. The parents of children with disabilities started to reflect whether creating homes to keep their children away from the others was the best option or something productive could be done. This thinking led to a change, and gradually by the 19th and 20th century, it began to be felt that persons with disabilities could be trained to independently carry out daily activities of living and personal care, eating, bathing, and dressing. It was also felt that they should be provided vocational training that would help them to be meaningfully occupied and also help them to earn some income. Special school centers were started, where special education was provided through various techniques suited for children with different types of disabilities. At this time, even though the focus was on training persons with disabilities, the underlying attitude was that of charity. People with disabilities were seen as those who could not take care of their own needs and needed special help and supervision to do so. The services to children with disabilities were provided as welfare services, and they were seen as less able than the majority. Gradually, towards the middle of the 20th century, family members of persons with disabilities and professionals started to reflect upon the need to involve people with disabilities more actively in society. It was realized that persons with disabilities could become a part of mainstream society if trained. It began to be realized that they needed to be seen not as completely dependent on others and in need of welfare services, but instead they needed to be seen as persons with abilities who could be trained to look after themselves and engage in some productive activity. Integrated education and community-based rehabilitation programs began to be established. Integrated education aimed at providing educational opportunities to children with disabilities along with non-disabled children. Community-based rehabilitation programs aim to help persons with disabilities to adjust within their community by using the resources available to them in the community. This approach of integrating the disabled reflected a change from the earlier charity and welfare approach. The emphasis on integration meant that persons with disabilities were seen as those who have potential that could be developed through education and training. While effort was made to integrate and involve people with disabilities in society, the approach was still that of the disabled being different from normal people, of thinking of disabled people as they who needed to adapt and learn and get trained in order to fit themselves and make themselves ready for integration with us, the majority of the society. Even now, it was seen as the responsibility of the persons with disabilities to change themselves to be integrated with and accepted by mainstream society. When you carefully think about the terms mainstream and integration, you will realize that both words indicate that there are two different groups in society: a mainstream group that consists of the majority non-disabled people and a minority group consisting of persons with disabilities, and that it is up to this minority group to prepare themselves to fit in, be integrated and mainstreamed. It is clear that persons with disabilities were not seen as equal with the non-disabled persons and were not given a chance to exercise the equal rights which they have by the fact of being human beings and by being citizens of a free country. An important event in the second half of the 20th century was the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948 by the United Nations. This declaration stated explicitly that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights, without any distinction on the basis of men and women, race, color, sex, language, religion, or other status. Our Constitution, formulated in 1950, guarantees equal rights to all citizens of India and clearly states that no person will be discriminated on any grounds. However, during the latter half of the 20th century, during the 1910s and 1980s, persons with disabilities in the UK, United Kingdom, and USA, United States of America, their parents and the professionals working with them began to express the concern that despite Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the fundamental rights guaranteed to all human beings in the Constitution of various countries, including ours, persons with disabilities were still not getting an opportunity to exercise their rights and were still not considered to be equal members of the society. A major reason for this, these activists stated, was that the society and the environment was organized around the needs and strengths of the non-disabled the non-disabled people had done nothing to adapt themselves or their environment to the needs and requirements of the disabled. The adjustment was one-sided. Persons with disabilities adjusted and trained themselves to fit into the environment created by the majority, for the majority. These activists began to stress that the environment needed to be changed in order to enable participation of persons with disabilities in all aspects of life, and that the views of persons with disabilities must be taken into account when planning anything for them. At this time, the activists raised the slogan, "Nothing for us without us," where us refers to persons to disabilities. The disability rights movement thus came into existence and gathered momentum all over the world. Important legislations like the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, 1990, and the Disability Discrimination Act, 1995, in the UK came into force. In India too, the Persons with Disabilities Act, 1995, was enacted. The activists began to assert that the society needed to restate that all people are equal and should have the same opportunities to participate in their family and community life. Further, simply restating this will not be enough. The society needs to create conditions to make this possible. Therefore, in order to focus attention once again on the equality of all human beings, including persons with disabilities, the United Nations adopted the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, UNCPD, in 2006. No new rights have been formulated within the convention. The convention states that all persons with disabilities will have the same opportunities as all others, but what is unique about the convention is that it emphasizes that conditions should be created in the society to enable them to exercise their human rights as equal members of society, and that the creation of these conditions is not only the responsibility of the minority population of the disabled but of the majority population of the non-disabled people. As mentioned a little earlier in this section, the significant aspect that you need to remember is that it was the persons with disabilities themselves who led this movement worldwide to once again reaffirm, restate, emphasize again the rights of the disabled and demanded for equal opportunities which would enable them to participate equally in society. The current understanding of disability is based on the realization that the environment around persons with disabilities has to change in order to provide them with opportunities for full participation in the society, which will enable them to be included in all aspects of community life. Any failure of the environment to change and adapt in the most effective manner creates barriers for the persons with disabilities, preventing their full participation in society. Change is needed in the physical environment as well as the social, political, and legal environment. The physical environment includes architectural barriers in buildings, public places, classrooms, playgrounds, and transport. The social environment includes our attitudes and behaviors towards those with disabilities. When our attitudes are favorable, our behaviors are positive, and these support persons with disabilities. When our attitudes are negative, then our behaviors are such that they prevent persons with disabilities from achieving their potential. Thus, barriers are created which prevent their full participation in community life. The political and legal environment refers to the policies and laws for people with disabilities. Thus, disability is not simply a result of an impairment in a person. It results from the interaction between persons with impairments and the social, cultural, legal, political, and physical features of their environment. When these features act as barriers, this limits the functioning of the person, leading to disability. When functioning is limited, participation of the person in society on an equal basis gets affected, leading to disability. 1.3 The changing perspectives towards disability from charity to human rights approach. There is another way to understand the historical perspective towards disability, which we have described in the section above. This is to see disability as an evolving concept. This means that how people have perceived disability and responded to persons with disabilities have changed and become more humane over the centuries. So the above discussion in section 1.2 can also be understood in terms of models of disability. Different models for understanding disability have been prevalent at different times, and each of these models has leads to a different approach towards persons with disabilities. Three most influential models are presented further in this section. 1.3.1 The charity model. According to the charity model of disability, persons with disabilities are seen as those in need of help because they are unable to do their work on their own and need support for daily living activities and other needs. This model views disability as a tragedy or a problem, and the situation of persons with disabilities as tragic and pitiable. The assumption is that the persons with disabilities have no choice but to take help from other people. In this model, people with disabilities are not valued as human beings in their own right, or as persons who have worth and who can lead a dignified life along with other non-disabled members of society. The non-disabled see their role largely as giving donations to charitable institutions working for persons with disabilities. From a religious perspective, such donations are seen as doing good deeds for the less fortunate. Disability may be viewed as a result of bad karma of the past. Beliefs such as disability is the result of deeds of previous birth reflect a charity approach towards persons with disabilities. The non-disabled, good human beings are expected to feel pity for their tragedy and provide help to them. In the charity approach, the non-disabled people are seen as saviors of persons with disabilities, acting for their benefit. This model dichotomizes, divides the human experience as normal, abnormal, disabled, able-bodied. Can you see the linkage between the description of the charity model in this subsection and the description of the attitude towards persons with disabilities in the 19th and 20th century discussed in section 1.2 above? You must have understood that the model of disability in the 19th and 20th century was the charity model. Limitations of the charity model. Many persons with disabilities regard the charity model in a negative light, since it depicts them as victims of their circumstance, helpless, depressed and dependent on other people for care and protection. It creates a viewpoint about the life of persons of disabilities as tragic and pitiable, as not worth living, and contributes to the continuation of harmful stereotypes and misconceptions regarding disability. Persons with disabilities are seen as those who take from the society and make no contribution to the society. 1.3.2 The medical model. The medical model of disability is based on the idea of normal, normative human development, both in terms of physical and psychological functioning. A person with disability is one who does not behave, think, respond, or carry out tasks and activities like others of the person's age. Disability is described as what a person cannot do as compared to others of her age or within the range considered normal for a human being. The medical model has explained disability by using three terms: impairment, disability, and handicap. In 1980, the World Health Organization, WHO, in their publication International Classification of Impairments, Disabilities and Handicaps, ICID, had clearly defined the terms impairment, disability, and handicap. In this publication, impairment has been explained as any loss or abnormality of psychological, physiological, or anatomical structure or function of a body, organ, For example, if the cornea, white part of the eye, becomes dry and wrinkled, then it has become defective and is impaired. The person is said to have a visual impairment. If during childbirth the child does not get enough oxygen, some brain cells may get damaged. This results in impairment in the brain. If the tissue of the foot becomes diseased causing rot to set in, it has become impaired. A burn on the forearm, while working in the kitchen that damages the tissue and nerves results in impairment in that arm. According to the IGNOU classification mentioned above, disability results from impairment. Disability is explained as any restriction or lack of ability to perform an activity in the manner or within the range considered normal for a human being. If the cornea becomes dry and wrinkled, then the child will gradually lose sight. So the impairment of the cornea, its becoming dry and wrinkled, has led to disability, loss of sight, i.e., a reduction in function of the eye. A person who has damage or impairment of some brain tissue and finds it difficult to control the muscles required for speech or mobility will have difficulty in communication or locomotion. So impairment of brain tissue has led to disability. However, if a person has impairment in the ear but this does not affect the ability to hear, then the impairment of the ear has not caused a disability. The point that is emphasized here is that impairment may or may not lead to a disability. A handicap, in the IGNOU classification, is explained as a disadvantage for an individual resulting from an impairment or a disability that limits or prevents the fulfillment of a role that is normal for the person's age, sex, and social and cultural factors. If a person with visual disability has difficulty in going about the daily business of life, in forming relationships, in acquiring an education and a job, then the disability, i.e., the inability to see, has resulted in a handicap because she is not able to perform the roles of a student, a worker, or a friend. These are roles which most people perform. However, if she faces no problem in these aspects or has only little difficulty, she is not handicapped even though she has a disability. We can state the main features of the medical model as follows. 1. The medical model focuses on impairment and disability. These defined with respect to the physical body, mental and psychological functioning of the person. Terms such as invalid, cripple, spastic, handicapped, and retarded, mad are all derived from the medical model. 2. Disability and handicap are described as what a person who has an impairment cannot do, in comparison with another person of her age who is able-bodied and does not have a similar impairment. In other words, the comparison is with a normal person. This approach to disability reinforces the idea that persons with disabilities are not comparable with their able-bodied counterparts. 3. The problems being faced by persons with disabilities are seen to be a result of the inadequacies of the body or mind of the person. The person is seen as responsible for the difficulties she is facing since the impairment is in her body. 4. Disability is seen as a health-related problem in the person that has to be corrected by medical care and treatment. The emphasis of the medical model is to change the individual by providing treatment or giving aids to make her fit the world of the non-disabled. This depicts the disease approach to disability.
5. When disability is seen in this way, then the term rehabilitation is used. Our approach to persons with disabilities becomes to make efforts to assist the person to change so that she can function as normal people do, as far as possible. In other words, we try to rehabilitate the person. Limitations of the medical model. The medical model does not focus on the social and environmental factors around the person. it does not give due emphasis to the fact that the environment also needs to be changed to enable persons with disabilities to exercise their rights, fulfill their potential, and realize their aspirations. Often, the solutions to disability which are offered by the medical model are not complete solutions and do not always enable the person to lead a full life in the community. This leads to the exclusion of people with disabilities and restricts them from leading full lives. In fact, the medical model often prevents us from realizing that the person with disabilities have aspirations and want to make choices and take decisions like all others do. Let us understand this point with the help of two examples. Example 1. According to the medical model, the difficulty of the child who is unable to move from one place to another due to impairment in the limbs is treated or corrected by giving her a wheelchair. But nothing is done to make sure that the roads, corridors, doorways, building entrances in the school and the playground are such that allow the wheelchair to be used by the child. Thus, while the child with disability is given a wheelchair to move about, there is no focus on simultaneously changing the physical environment or the attitude of the teachers in the school who did not give the child any role in the school play as they felt that she would look odd in her wheelchair on the stage. Thus, the medical model saw the child with disability as one who had a physical problem. It did not expect the child to participate in the social life within the family and community, and so did not examine the child's social environment to see what change is needed to be brought about in it to enable the child to benefit from having a wheelchair. However, only when the child meaningfully participates in the family, school and community life can we say that she is actually benefited by having been provided a wheelchair. Example 2. The medical model sees a child who has mental retardation, intellectual impairment, as someone whose condition cannot be corrected or treated and made normal with medical help. Thus, the child is not considered capable of leading a life like most other people or making her decisions and choices. The approach then becomes to either put away the child in a home or enroll her in a special center where other people around her decide the kind of activities she can be involved in. The medical model does not focus on changing the environment and adapting it so that the child can participate meaningfully in community and family life to the best of her ability. The realization that the medical model does not enable full participation of persons with disabilities in society gradually grew among persons with disabilities themselves and the activists working for them. Over a period of time, the social model of disability has evolved, about which we will read in the following subsection. 1.3.3 The social model and the human rights approach. The social model of disability states that disability is not simply a result of loss of body part, or difficulty in functioning or impairment in a person. Disability results from the interaction between persons with impairments and the social and physical features of their environment. In contrast with the medical model, the social model sees the medical condition or the impairment as only a part of the total picture. The social model points out that the problems faced by people with disabilities are caused not primarily by their impairments, but because of the fact that the society and the environment is organized and structured to meet the needs of non-disabled normal people and ignores the needs of persons with disabilities. The physical and social settings of the society and the environment do not take the person with disability into account. The person with the impairment may have limitations in doing certain things, but the point of concern is that the environment further disables, limits, people with disabilities. Recall the example above where the child is given a wheelchair, but since the buildings or the road have not been made accessible for the wheelchair, the child is not able to use it. To give another example, disability does not come from having to use a white cane because of blindness but from being unable to use footpath even if the person with blindness has the white cane because of uneven surface of the footpath. Thus, people with disabilities become segregated and excluded because of a badly designed physical environment, for e.g., inaccessible buildings, public transport or playgrounds, negative social environment, e.g., prejudices and attitudes which lead to discrimination, such as a child with disability being denied admission in school because of negative attitude of principal. Inadequate political and legal environment, e.g., lack of a defined policy and laws for persons with disabilities to realize their rights, segregated educational environment, e.g., lack of infrastructure in educational institutions, and lack of trained teachers to practice inclusive education where all children study together. Let us understand the difference in the medical and social models through the example below. Example 3. Priya is a 1-year-old girl who has spastic cerebral palsy and moderate mental retardation. She cannot walk and has limited speech. The medical model approach will suggest that she stay at home and her family members and a special teacher teach her to sit, stand, walk, speak, eat and get toilet trained at home. At the most, it may suggest that she attends a special school where she receives some training. It will suggest the above, as it assumes that Priya will not fit into a regular school and, therefore, cannot receive education with other non-disabled children of her age. The social model approach, on the other hand, will assess the environment around her to understand what changes can be made in the environment to ensure that Priya spends as much time with other 1-year-old non-disabled children, in school and at home, doing things that most children of her age will be doing. This will be possible by providing Priya the support that she needs to participate to the best of her abilities in the school. This approach helps us to take appropriate steps to ensure that Priya attends a regular school and receives the required support in the school to move around, communicate with children and adults, use assistive aids and receive education according to her needs, along with other non-disabled children of her age. The social model focuses our attention on the fact that we need to understand and respect the differences among all children and structure, make, design the environment in such a way that all children, including children with disabilities, receive the required support from the environment to achieve their full potential. What do we mean by support from the environment? Some suggestions for providing support are the following. Rearranging the physical space in classrooms, homes and community buildings so that the mobility needs of children with disabilities are taken care of and they can participate equally in the home, school and community activities, in spite of their different functioning level that occurs due to their impairment. Adapting books, other study materials and play activities so that all children can participate in class activities. Providing appropriate technology and assistive devices to support learning. The social model of disability does not deny the problems or barriers faced by persons with disabilities, but in contrast with the medical model, does not hold persons with disabilities to be responsible for the difficulties that they are facing. Instead, it places the responsibility on the community and society to change the physical and social environment and ensure that persons with disabilities are able to participate in all age-appropriate activities, to the best of their ability. Meaningful participation in community life creates a feeling of well-being. We can state the main features of the social model as follows. 1. This model states that human beings have a diverse range of abilities and skills and that people with disabilities are a part of this diversity. It focuses on the abilities and strengths of a person, instead of her difficulties and limitations, and shows disability as a part of human diversity. 2. In this model, disability is not seen as the problem of the individual. Disability results from the failure on the part of the society to make necessary adjustments and modifications that will enable people with disabilities to participate fully in all areas of life. The society creates barriers through ignorance and prejudice. These barriers prevent people with disabilities from receiving, accessing, education, finding meaningful work, accessible job environments, and enjoying family and social life. When the barriers are reduced, disability is minimum. 3. The objective of services for persons with disabilities when seen through the lens of the social model is not merely on rehabilitation, where the focus is on training the disabled person or giving assistive devices. While this needs to be done and is important, the focus of services for persons with disabilities in the social model is on removing barriers that prevent people with disabilities from participating in society on an equal basis. The focus is on changing the disabling world by providing access. Since it is society which disables people with impairments and, therefore, any meaningful solution must be directed at societal change rather than individual adjustment and rehabilitation. Limitations of the social model. The social model of disability is the most empowering model for persons with disabilities, as it makes a distinction between impairment and disability and seeks to remove the barriers that restrict the choices for them. However, the social model of disability has not been able to address the issues related to the different experiences of persons with disabilities, which are a result of gender, sexuality, race, culture, or other distinctions. For example, does a girl with locomotor disability and a boy with locomotor disability face similar problems? The girl may face more problems in traveling by public transport, not because of the limitation of her disability, but because of how people in the public may view a girl. Simply changing our perspective towards disability is not enough. Our actions have to reflect our changed attitudes. We have to bring about changes in the physical and social environments. Only then will people with disabilities be able to live life as equal citizens. Think of a disabled child or adult whom you know. Reflect upon her circumstances and the opportunities she has. If you were to view this person with disability from the point of view of the social model, what actions would you suggest to others around her to take? 1.4 Who's International Classification of Functioning. You have read in subsection 1.3.1 that in 1980, the World Health Organization, WHO, defined disability by classifying it in terms of impairments, disabilities, and handicap, which reflected the medical model approach to disability. You know that people with disabilities and professionals working in the field disagreed with the medical model, which emphasizes the impairment and does not mention the potential or abilities of disabled persons. Responding to the changing approach towards disability from the point of view of functioning, it adopted the International Classification of Functioning, Disability and Health, commonly referred to as the ICF. ICF has defined disability in terms of impairments, activity limitations, and participation restrictions. Disability is an umbrella term for impairments, activity limitations, and participation restrictions. It denotes the negative aspects of the interaction between a person's health conditions and that individual's contextual factors, environmental and personal factors. Let us understand this definition. The ICF definition recognizes that the impairment restricts the person's range of activity and so prevents her from participating in community life to the fullest. This is what is meant by activity limitation and participation restriction. However, the definition also states that when the environment adapts and provides support to the person with impairment, then the person is able to participate to the maximum extent possible in family and community. life in the most independent manner possible and to her full potential. In such a situation, while the impairment causes a restriction in an activity, it does not cause a disability because the environment is such that it facilitates participation and does not limit it. The impairment may cause a restriction in activity, but if the restriction in activity does not cause a limitation in participation in family and community, then the disability is reduced to the minimum. In other words, the adapted and supportive environment prevents the impairment from becoming a disability. Thus, the new definition emphasizes the role of the environment on the ability of a person to function effectively. This will be possible only when the environment provides the required support to the person. Here, the environment includes all aspects, including physical and social attitudinal. The ICF emphasizes that disability is the effect of the non-accommodating environment, an environment that creates barriers for the person with impairment. This is what we have to aim for, to reduce the barriers of the environment as much as possible, so that the person is not limited or restricted in any way to function. Our objective should be to work towards preventing the impairment from becoming a limitation or a disability for the individual. This will involve working on both supporting the person with disability as well as changing the society and environment around the person, so that it enables her to function and fulfill roles expected in the society. The new understanding of disability is shown in the diagram below. Body function and structure, impairment, level of body. Activity, limitations, level of person. Participation, restrictions, level of society. To summarize, the concept of functioning measures disability by the opportunities provided in the environment for a person with disability to participate as a full and equal citizen, to enable her to function as independently as possible. In order for the person to function in the most independent manner, the environment and its people will provide the required level of support. The ICF definition puts the idea of health and disability in a new light. That every human being can experience a reduction, fall, in health and thus experience some degree of disability. Disability is not something that happens to only a few people. Thus, the ICF brings the experience of disability in the mainstream of society and recognizes it as universal human experience. It does not focus on the cause of the disability but on its impact on the person. The impact of the disability is to be measured, seen, in terms of the extent to which it limits, restricts, the activities of the person and limits the participation of the person in family and community life. While focusing on the impact, it sees it as the responsibility of the society to create conditions for participation. 1.5 WHO are children with disabilities? The Convention of the Rights of People with Disabilities adopted in the year 2006 defines a disability as persons with disabilities include those who have long-term physical, mental, intellectual or sensory impairments which in interaction with various barriers may hinder their full and effective participation in society on an equal basis with others. The Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, 2016 enacted by our country has adopted the same definition. Persons with disabilities refers to individuals facing challenges due to long-term issues related to their body, mind, intellect, or senses. These challenges, when combined with various obstacles in their surroundings, can make it difficult for them to fully and effectively engage in society just like everyone else. It means that when people have conditions that affect them and the world around them is not set up to support their needs, for example, lacking ramps. For those with mobility impairments or not providing materials inaccessible. Formats for those with sensory impairments, they may find it challenging to participate in society on an equal footing. This difficulty in participation is what we refer to as the experience of disability. This perspective is known as the social model of disability, emphasizing that disabilities are not just about individual impairments but are also influenced by the barriers present in the environment. The impairments may be physical, motor, cognitive, language, social, or emotional. When the children interact in the environment, in the family, community, or school, they face difficulties, challenges, and barriers that prevent them from being able to function adequately and independently, and like other children of their age. The difficulties they face and the lack of specific support that they need make it difficult for them to reach their full potential. These children need additional and alternate inputs and support to maximize their learning and development as compared to most other children. The nature of support required for children with disabilities could vary from therapy to teaching assistance to physical equipment. The physical equipment includes aids and appliances which are also called assistive devices. These include hearing aids, magnifiers for persons with low vision, wheelchairs or crutches, and specific teaching learning materials. 1.6 Sameness in differences. Accepting diversity. The unique needs of children with disabilities make it seem that their needs are different from children without disability. While this is true, what is equally important, and, in fact, more important to remember is that in many ways, the child with a disability is just like any other child. By focusing on the child's disability, we do not even notice the ways in which her needs are similar to others. Unfortunately, most of the time, the disability tends to overshadow the child's other childlike actions and we do not notice the many ways in which she is similar to the non-disabled children of her age. I also enjoy playing in the rain. Let us reflect upon this point for a while. If you have interacted with a child who cannot see, you would know that she likes to play, listen to stories, and sing nursery rhymes just like others. When angry or in a bad mood, she too likes to be given special attention. She can skip and jump, climb stairs, and talk like most others. She too has friends, has developed bonds of love and attachment with her near and dear ones. She experiences the usual joys and difficulties of growing up. She feels angry, sad, happy, and envious, like any of us. She feels hurt and lonely if she feels that she is not loved or wanted, just as anybody else would. She too wants to study and get a job when she is an adult. Similarly, the child whose legs are affected will not be able to crawl, walk, and run at the time when most other children do. She may need supports, assistive devices, to enable her to walk, or she may need a wheelchair. But she can talk and think just like other children of her age, participate in games which do not require much movement, and have dreams and plan about her future. Thus, in most aspects, she is like most children of her age. We are not ignoring the fact that many children with disabilities will need support. But what is being said is that focusing on the ways in which a child with a disability is like other non-disabled children will stress her positive points and enable you to build on those. Such an attitude will help you to view the child on the basis of what they can or cannot do, and not on the basis of which part of her body is affected. 1.6.1 The purpose of focusing on both differences and similarities. We need to focus on the differences as well, but the purpose should be to help the child be a part of the society. Read further to know what we mean. 1. The special needs of child with disability should guide us to provide support to her and to adapt the environment so that she can participate fully. We need to keep the child's special needs in mind so that we can create equal opportunities for her to participate in play and learning to communicate, move, grow and develop as other children of her age. But we need to convey, through your attitudes and actions, that we do not consider her inferior when compared to others, or less able to do work. You would find around yourself many people with disability who are economically independent, have succeeded in their chosen profession, can look after themselves, are a source of support to others in the family, and have made a place for themselves in the community. Many people with disabilities have exceptional abilities and are gifted. Does it make sense then to focus simply on their disability? 2. A person may be disabled in one environment but not in others. A boy who has difficulties in moving around and using his hands to write may find it difficult to go to school if the environment is not adapted for him to use the walker and he is expected to sit on a regular bench to do his work, read and write as other children. However, he may adjust very well in another school where he has the facility of using computer and adapted computer devices for writing and communicating, where he has an adapted chair and table suited to his physical needs and where the school building has been made appropriate for using the wheelchair by providing ramps. These adaptations will enable him to participate actively in classroom activities. 3. Another point that we need to remember is that we must judge the disability in terms of the present and future circumstances of the person. This means that whether impairment becomes a disability or not depends upon the environment of the person. If a visually impaired child has the opportunity to gain admission in a school where instruction is also given in Braille, her blindness does not come in the way of her getting an education. If a man who stammers gets the job of a postman, his stammer is not a limitation in terms of employment. It may have been had he tried to work as a salesman or a receptionist. Money also makes a difference. If a person cannot walk, but can afford to buy a wheelchair, then he is no longer disabled as far as moving around is concerned. You may have seen motorized vehicles especially made for people with locomotor disabilities. If a person can use this, then traveling moderate distances becomes easy and a number of options open up. What we wanted to bring out through this discussion was that when planning for children with disabilities, focus on children's strengths and convey to them that you consider them equal to others. Look at their present as well as their future and try to see how circumstances might hamper them or can help them. Estimate how the environment can be adapted. Respect their feelings, likes and dislikes, interests and abilities and help them in the process of making their own choices and decisions, in the same way as we would do for our non-disabled children. Each one of us needs to think about our role in creating an enabling and inclusive environment for children with disabilities. The principles and perspectives we have described in this unit will become clearer as you read the subsequent units of this block and the next one. 1.7 The Inspiring Life of Shrikant Bola. Many of the challenges that we have highlighted in the above section have been overcome by Shrikant Bola, who has blindness and is currently the CEO of Bolant Industries Pvt. Limited, which is a multimillion-dollar company. He is providing employment opportunities to many persons with disabilities in his company. He is a youth leader in the Lead India program initiated by Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, the former President of India. Let us read briefly about the challenges he faced and overcame. Shrikant Bola was born on 1st July, 1992 in Sitamapuram, Machilipatnam, Andhra Pradesh. He was born blind and his parents were advised by their neighbors to abandon their child because they said that he would grow up to become a burden to them. Fortunately, his parents accepted him and vowed to take care of him. Even though the family was a very poor farmer family that struggled to meet basic needs, Shrikant Bola was never neglected by his parents. Struggles for education. Even though his parents were illiterate, they realized the importance of education and enrolled Shrikant Bola in the nearby school. However, the school was not inclusive in its approach and here he was discriminated against by the students and teachers alike. He was always made to sit on the last bench and was not allowed to participate in any extracurricular activities. His father was unable to bear the humiliation of his child and took him out of the school and began to take him to the farm to help him. But soon, Shrikant's father realized his son's passion for education, and so he admitted him in the special school for blind in the nearby city. In this school, Shrikant Bola was able to perform well. He soon topped the class with his hard work and dedication. He excelled at games like chess and was also a national level cricketer. Through hard work, he passed class 10th examination with flying colors. His parents were very happy with his success and intelligence. Shrikant Bola wanted to join the science stream in senior secondary, but the authorities rejected his application saying that blind students were unfit for science. He was greatly disappointed, but he turned that disappointment into a will to succeed. With the support of one of his teachers, he raised his voice against this discriminatory regulation, and after a fight of around 6 months, he won the case and got admission into the science stream. He toiled day and night and studied hard to achieve 98% marks in examinations, stunning everyone around him by his performance. Shrikant Bola was immensely helped his supportive teacher, who used to audio record the textbooks for him. Even after academic success at the school level, he was again discriminated against when he applied for entrance examinations of prestigious colleges like Indian Institute of Technology, IIT, and BITS. He was not allowed to write the entrance exam. Almost all of the Indian colleges closed doors on him. Achieving success. Shrikant Bola did not accept defeat. He applied to a few American universities online and 4 of them were ready to admit him. He chose Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, for his graduation. There, he was the first international blind student and MIT offered him a full fee waiver. After completing his graduation, he received many job offers from American companies. But his love for his motherland made him return to India and contribute to its development. In 2012, he started Bolint Industries in Nacharam, Hyderabad, Telangana. Bolint Industries specializes in waste management services. Today, Shrikant Bola is an inspiration for the youth and a role model for the children with disabilities all across the world. He promotes entrepreneurship and inspires the youth to pursue their dreams. 1. 8. Summing up. Times in the middle of the 20th century, family members of persons with disabilities and professionals realized that persons with disabilities could become an active part of the society if they receive rehabilitation and training. Times the current understanding of disability is based on the fact that changes needed in the physical environment as well as the social environment in order to provide persons with disabilities opportunities to participate fully in the society. Times any failure of the physical and social environment to change and understanding disability and children with disabilities adapt in the most effective manner creates barriers for persons with disabilities, preventing their full participation in society. The social model points out that the problems faced by people with disabilities are caused not primarily by their impairments, but by the way society and the environment is organized and structured to meet the needs of non-disabled, normal people. Times according to the ICF definition, the impairment restricts the person's range of activity and so prevents her or him from participating in community life to the fullest. When the environment adapts and provides support, then the person is able to participate to the maximum extent possible in family and community life. Times children with disabilities need additional and alternate types of inputs and support to maximize their learning and development as compared to most other children. Times any human being may be disabled in one environment but not in others. We are all interdependent upon one another to function to our best abilities. Times children with disabilities share common experiences, emotions, and desires with their non-disabled peers. We need to emphasize their strengths and acknowledge their ability to engage in various activities, form relationships, and experience the full range of emotions. By focusing on their similarities, we can build a positive perspective that allows for the development of the child's potential. Times plan inclusively by considering both the unique needs and potential of children with disabilities. Adapt environments and provide necessary support to ensure equal opportunities for participation in play, learning, communication, and growth. Plan interventions based on individual circumstances, keeping in mind that disability is context-dependent and a supportive environment can significantly impact a child's present and future capabilities. Thank you for listening. We will be back with next chapter.